going to ask a question. You're going to ask questions. We're all going to be informed and enlightened this morning. Hallelujah on the Sunday morning. And for those who are not, hallelujah. Just good to see you. So, Andy, if you could just briefly introduce yourself in any way you feel fit.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I'm Andy Neal. I work with Mike. I've been doing posts on LinkedIn for a while now about technical topics. So I'm a data guy. I'm an enterprise architect guy. I'm a father. I do lots of renovations around my house. I'm very big into renovations and lots of other hobbies.
So what would you... Hans, do you want to start with the question? Everybody knows who Hans is, but for those who are new,
I'll do a quick intro.
Yeah, do that.
Yep, Hans Ekman. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and welcome back. Good to hear from everybody as you're joining in, and hopefully catching this recording later as well. I've also spent a lot of time in IT, focusing in on simplification, automation, and really improving people's lives through technology and trying to streamline all the annoying, boring stuff. So excited to be here this morning with everyone.
Okay, I'll ask the first question because I'm clearly the most comfortable right now.
Sure, sounds good.
Just breathe. We're all good. Okay. Singing is free. It costs you nothing with me. Okay, so number one, let's talk about Australia and Google, and you know what I'm talking about. So do you want to start first, Andy?
Sure. I heard the news just recently, and lots of social media platforms have been under the light recently with the whole, taking away account access and large organizations doing what they feel is right. This is an interesting one because it's almost like you're having a private company like Google, which has become the ubiquitous way of searching now for anything. And it seems like an everyday, almost a right that people have. Using Google or Googling something is just something people do. So kind of making an organization like that pay fees for broadcasting and licenses for broadcasting is an interesting concept. It reminds me back when I was back in the UK of the TV license. So every year you had to pay a fee for a TV license in order to watch live broadcasting. It seems like that model. So I'm undecided about whether it's a good thing or bad thing, or whether I'm sure it's legal, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I'm having two real big challenges. The first of which was a comment actually from a government official that basically said, Google's rich, they can afford to pay the news agencies, they need the money more than Google does. And that's just a bad premise to start on, that you get to redistribute a company's income how you see fit. The other challenge seems to be, what we face all the time, a confusion over technology and how it works. If Google was taking news articles, taking content, and then redistributing it directly through its platform so that you weren't seeing the ads, the sponsorship, the subscriptions for a news agency, absolutely. Then you're taking someone's content and you're using it for yourself. There should be compensation or a licensing or some sort of sharing agreement. I mean, when you look at the streaming music sites, they pay the artists for their music. They don't pay them much, but They're getting something. But paying just to pop up in a search listing, like, imagine I couldn't afford that if someone searched ekmanguides.com. I can't afford to pay Google every time someone searches it or comes up with that answer. So I think there's a big challenge there when you look at, and even Google News, which is an aggregator. It gives you the title in 1 to 2 lines, but the whole thing is it's driving probably most of the traffic to these sites in the first place. So you take that away, unless you go to their news site, which doesn't affect Google at all, they're going to lose a lot of revenue. I think it'll hurt agencies.
Exactly. I think Google's doing a lot of benefit now for these guys because they're getting people known. They're getting that word of mouth out there. Even I know a few friends of mine have got these apps from Google that obviously aggregate different news feeds together based on rules and settings.
Yeah.
And that's how they learn about news and things that are coming up. So without that, it would be, they would get a significant drop in traffic, I would have thought.
Yeah. I think, looking at both Google, you hear the same arguments with Amazon and a lot of the social sites, is they're private companies. They have every right, or should have every right, to run their own terms of service, provide their own platform as they see fit. But what happens when that platform becomes a dominant location for people? It's like, what you built the roads. We didn't mind paying toll roads because you built them, but now they're the only ways to get in and out of the city. And when they're applying their censorship, their rules differently to different groups, different opinions, and they're now influencing what could be done on the platform, now we're getting into a real, I'd say, gray and uncomfortable area. I don't have a good answer to that, but I think you've seen some of that as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's interesting because I can see it from the other point of view as well. I mean, not discounting the news distributors. They're like, we haven't got that much money. We're not a Google platform. We're not super rich, so we need income somehow. And obviously the government is trying as best they can to support them. So it's nice in that aspect. I know when, for example, going back to the example with the BBC, I used to work at the BBC, and when the BBC the licensing TV cost came in, the bulk of that fund was for the BBC because that was Channel 1, Channel 2. But there was a small portion distributed to other local agencies as well to do some content. So again, there was arguments about, what's the ratio look like and that kind of thing. So I can see from the broadcasters and news outlets' point of view as well. But I think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot if they continue this too long.
Yeah. And Fat Guy Out West brought up, how do you feel about how they use AI to recognize your search? So now we take it into AI and automatically, prioritizing, promoting certain posts, certain sites, or in some ways using AI to automatically suppress things like what is fake news? Fake to who, and where do we draw the line? So what do you think about some of the AI influences now that we're taking it away from people?
Absolutely, and I think it's AI is sometimes a little bit dangerous. Going to deep fakes is a little bit dangerous. Obviously, creating news articles completely by autonomy. But AI does have a place if it can quickly recognize what's dangerous and what's not. Sure, AI's got a place there. The thing you have to be careful of in AI is that there's bias that can creep in any kind of level. Bias can creep in the data sets that you use to train your algorithm. We've seen lots of cases of that, like the recruiting agencies and recruiting applications that people have built. Bias can also creep in the model that you use, depending on the kind of model. It can actually be biased in the model. So we have to be a bit careful about using AI and leaning on it too much, because it can have biases in it that come from humans anyway, right? Stem from humans originally.
Andy, we've hit a nerve here. We've got quite a few questions here. If we could answer some of them, we want them to feel that they are loved and nurtured. We can't have them
right.
just floating along the Google Sea of misery. Okay, there you go.
Right.
Yeah, so Michael, feel free to help pull those questions in. I was trying to hit the ones that I see, but I may be missing some in the thread as well.
Okay, well, Randy W. Horton, who is a legend on this platform, hail to Randy. Google has a plan, and they seem to be doing quite well. They are growing beyond control and remind me of the Bell company years ago. And he's talking about Bell Canada.
Right.
And I think all over them. Yeah. So can we address that? Because we're just going to pay some homage to the big stars on HAPS. And before we do that, I have to do one plug for HAPS, because we always do that. Sure. Listen, if you're new, don't know anything about HAPS, look at how beautiful these men look on here. Look at the quality. Look at the sheer brilliance. Look at all these comments. Your business right now could benefit from this technology. It's brand new. It's in beta. It's got a few bugs right now, but it's going to get better. It's like anything at the beginning, we have to be patient. So let's address Randy W. Horton's question. Who wants to go first?
I'll take a first stab because I think we should be very kind to our Skynet overlords before they seize all control. I think it's a good point because, and we're in really uncharted areas. When we looked at monopolies and trying to maintain fair competition, we're in an age where at almost no cost, anyone, like through HAPS, at absolutely no cost, you can have a channel, you can broadcast it out, you can have a voice. So it's very disruptive. In the same vein, we now have companies who have, let's just say, cornered 80% of a market and have a lot more influence. What does a monopoly look like in technology? Andy, what do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting because Google's almost a monopoly that it hasn't been created from acquisition or created from bringing companies together. It's been created kind of invisibly by kind of over time. So just growing up that way, and it's come into that position, obviously, by the good technology and that kind of thing. So now we're at a point when, even to search something, the verb is now called I Googled something. So it's becoming very entwined into life. What happens eventually, though, because search engines, I assume at some point, are going to go away, right? You're not going to have a type-in keyboard interface to search information in the future, right? Way in the future, when my daughter is older, you probably won't have keyboards even. There'll be another interface, I'm sure, to information. So how does that work? Every day I'm asking Google something. I'm saying, I'm not going to say the word to activate it because it will, but asking it a question and it responds and it reads the first Wikipedia page it finds or whatever. That's becoming quite apparent now, and that I suspect is split now. You've got the Amazon, the Alexa version, and the Google version. So now we're seeing homes built in ways that you can access the internet via voice, and that probably is the future. And that might shake things up. That might distribute the traffic or the way we gain information from different vendors. Who knows?
Right. And as Randy mentions, Google does seem to meet a lot of the definition of how the phone companies were a monopoly. And how would you break up a company like Google, since they've built an integrated platform to leverage the information, the processing across everything else? It's like you can't have Amazon without Amazon Web Services. Google search, advertising all tie in and power a lot of others. How do you even split something like that up?
I think the idea here is that generally when somebody monopolizes in an area, the only way to undermine that monopoly or at least distribute evenly is to do some kind of innovation. Is to think outside the box and say, okay, we're providing something that you don't yet, and we're going to get on that market. If you go to Google head to head and just create a search engine and say, okay, I've got a new search engine that's going to be as good as Google, doesn't matter if it is as good as Google, you haven't got the background, you haven't got the reputation, so you're never going to survive. If you have something that's completely different, a completely different angle looking at things, that might break you in to the area. I think that's the only way you're gonna see that distribution.
Right. Well, look at what happened with Microsoft. How many countries and have sued Microsoft over having countries and businesses because Internet Explorer became embedded into the operating system, and so your way of getting to files was actually through that interface, and there was always calls to cut it out, and that never went anywhere. I think we might see something similar with Google. If they're not suppressing the ability for competition, then, it's hard to say. But, I think depending on where the courts are, like the EU, I think is going to be far more against Google. And they may end up just deciding that paying the fines is the cost of business and not change anything and try and weather the storm.
Okay, guys, we're in the Google outer sphere of craziness here. Let's go to Andy's first question. Andy, what do you want to ask?
Sure. I was going to ask about. I've seen in the news recently about the blocking of certain social media accounts from very influential people in the world, and it's interesting to see that that's now become normal all of a sudden. You know, with one individual, obviously that horrific day that happened in the past, and that's now become, well, we can do that now. These companies, social media companies, can just block accounts and say, look, it's not right to have that account. It's gonna hurt people. It might even kill people. You know, information words can damage certain things, and they can produce certain events. So, what do we think about that? What do we think about social media platforms completely taking away access? I mean, obviously it's their right because they own the platform, but what does that cause? What's the change in culture there?
It's scary. I see the need. Like, there's got to be some level of moderation, and you know, there are, you know, if we had a known terrorist organization that wanted to set up a Twitter account and try and incite violence and chaos everywhere, you'd say absolutely not. That would be crazy. And then you start getting into the gray area, going to the other extreme. Look what China's done. China has recently shut down almost all pro-democracy websites and accounts, and now is retroactively putting people in jail who have asked for maintaining, not even new rights, but even maintaining the freedoms that Hong Kong citizens had. And, you know, how far do you go along that spectrum? I think the other problem is just the inconsistency. You're seeing very specific opinions, very specific directions and groups be deplatformed. GoDaddy recently suspended internet registration for a domain name for a company that provided information to a certain sector and audience, and without any reason, just cut them off entirely. I think it's a little dangerous when you're applying that based on personal beliefs within the company and not violation of clear and defined policies. So, as you said, there it's not even accidental bias with AI, it's intentional bias to suppress certain opinions, even if they're for good reasons. I think it's a very dangerous slope to get on. Free speech has to go around to everybody, or it's not effective for anyone.
Absolutely. And I think here is where we need to see some kind of worldwide organization set up some kind of governance to at least everyone's on the same page. Because it's very easy to say things like, if this account or this person is very influential and is creating content that is causing violence, is causing, you know, even war, then it's obvious that you want to shut that account down and shut that access down.
Right.
So that's kind of, everybody will probably agree to that. But obviously you've got to be careful about the free speech access as well. You want to be able to have free speech access as long as it doesn't significantly, you know, do harm to people. It's like the Hippocratic Oath, right? That's the kind of what I'm thinking. If you distribute that kind of legislation or requirement to all countries, I think people would sign up for that, and that might be a way forward.
Do you think we can apply that filter though? Because if we say, let's say we said, all right, you're okay as long as you don't harm. Who gets to decide what's harmful? Because there's certain societal and political beliefs that go against my own. Their opinions, therefore, are harming me if they influence and get their way. And, you know, who gets to decide what's harmful and not? It's like, who gets to decide what is true? Spinning into this, AOC recently in an interview suggested having a government agency be basically the Ministry of Truth, and they would be the final word on social media to decide what is or what isn't true. The minute the government controls what is true, they've basically controlled public opinion, and we now have moved over from, you know, a democracy or a limited democracy now to approaching a tyranny, as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather have hateful, horrible, nasty, and potentially dangerous speech than lose our ability to speak and have a voice.
This is a spiritual show. This is all about uplifting. This is not about hatred. No, I'm only kidding. So, guys, we're into 20 minutes so far. Clearly, we could talk for 2 hours, which is wonderful. I would like now, if it's okay, we get Hans to ask a question. And then I was thinking at the end there, I've already invited Tuan. I hope Tuan comes up. I think Tuan, we may have upset him in the last chat we had with some of the things we said. And that happens. here on Habs. So ask your question, sir. And you guys are doing phenomenal. Please keep asking questions. They will. Do you want to answer maybe one of the questions in the comments, or do you want to?
Yeah, if there's something that you want to bring up, I haven't seen any questions. I've seen some great comments and discussion on the side. Richard most recently saying, "Hey, AOC, her heart and intent is in the right space, but the way of getting it might not work or be counterproductive." I think that's a very fair statement.
Yeah, I see a comment here from Fat Guy Out West saying, now isn't that part of the core problem, how to make the world more equitable? And I agree. I think democracy has to prevail here. It has to be distributed equally across the world. And I think the world gets forgotten. When we say the world, we often talk about the North Americas and the Europes and the Russias, kind of the big countries that are in the media all the time. The world isn't just that. The world has hundreds of countries. Why aren't we seeing representation from all those countries? So I think everybody has to have a voice here. And I think there must be some mechanism to bring that together to make some kind of decision authority to say what is harmful or not.
See, when you were saying that, all I could hear in my mind was, what the world needs more is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's not too much of. I think I got that wrong. Okay, so we want to go in a little slightly different direction, if it's okay. I still would love for you to answer a question, sir, or ask a question, or.
Yep. Yeah. Well, spinning back into the positive, because it's easy to dwell on the problems and areas that we want to see better fix. For both of you, 2021 is starting, we're continuing a little bit of the dumpster fire, but what are some things that you're looking forward to? What are some of the things that you think 2021 will bring that will really be positive or have a positive impact? So we know that sadly, the more people that recover from COVID and get vaccinated, that's going to really stimulate getting back to more normal operations. So, that one's pretty there. But what are some other things that you're really looking forward to or hoping will materialize in 2021?
I'm looking forward to the day where we can go back to the office after being all vaccinated and have a hug. I'm a kind of touchy kind of guy, hit you on the back and say, how you doing, and that kind of thing. I miss that interactivity. So that's something I'll miss, and I'll look forward to that going forward. Saying that, COVID obviously has been a disastrous thing for people because, many lives lost, and it's horrific. There are some upsides as well. I mean, I love working at home as well. I love seeing my family more. I'm not a big fan of the 2-hour commute each way every day that I used to do. Now I've got that 2 hours back. I know my family much better, and it's lovely for me. So there are benefits, obviously, to working at home and this kind of culture, and I suspect some of that will continue. I think working at home or working from home will be a concept where that's okay now, where it didn't used to be, because we've been forced into that modality. So I think that's good news. So I'm looking forward to continuing the balance of working at home and seeing the family, and going to work and having beers with colleagues going forward.
Do you want my opinion now? Is that the
absolutely
where we're going here? Okay. What I hope is that we've looked at this as a reset, and all the things that I loved and took for granted, I now have a greater appreciation of the people I love and the circumstances. I miss the elevator. I miss even the grumpy people at work. Who would ever think I would miss the grumpy people? But I miss the interaction and the chaos. And the company we work for is incredible. And when the business is running at full tilt, it is fun to watch, especially, if you're at year end and you can see and feel the stresses, but people are excited. And, it's the whole human experience within a few weeks. And I miss that. But I'm really looking forward to a new world where we're maybe a little bit more patient than we used to be, especially with ourselves, and okay with looking at the people in the mirror And what I mean is ourselves, and saying, look, you don't have to be perfect. We survived 2020. We can do anything. Okay. I think I put a little too much icing on that cake, but that's all right.
Well, it was beautiful. And I think a lot of people, and Randy, called this out as well. A lot of people are appreciating not having the same commute, the lost time in traffic, just that huge loss in productivity. I think technology, once again, is creating more opportunities for people, because now companies have realized you can maintain productivity relatively affordably by having people work from almost any location. And I think that's going to be very powerful as the job market and businesses pick back up, because we're going to see more finding the best people for your culture, for your employment, regardless of where they happen to work, rather than, I've passed on some amazing jobs because I'm not willing to spend an hour in traffic each way in Atlanta. And it just wasn't fair. And I think we're going to be able to draw from a much greater working pool because of telecommuting, teleworking, and being focused.
Absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about spending 6 months of the year in Trinidad and Tobago when we've gone back to work and everything's back to normal, because I've got family there. I love Trinidad. It's the place I go all the time because of the family, and it'll be cool, right? 6 months in Trinidad in the winter, so we don't get the Canadian winter, and then 6 months back in Canada. I think that'll be a cool lifestyle, and it will also, I think, to Hans's point, get us the ability to reach people that we couldn't normally reach, because now you're in proximity, working at home or working at different locations, to leverage talent that you wouldn't have been able to before. So right. I think that'd be really cool.
Well, and also with the low cost of entry, I mean, you see platforms like HAPS, where now, if you've got a voice, a show, an interest, you can get up and running almost immediately. I think that's powerful. MIT put all of their courses online for free. Think about being in the world and being able to take MIT courses and teach yourself and grow. And that's where the innovation, the empowerment, the small businesses could help really stimulate a lot of economies throughout the world. So I see it as a bridge to creating more opportunities, but people also have to put in the work and take advantage of them. You've got to make that effort. I haven't looked at any of the courses on MIT, so I don't get to benefit from that. But, for me, that's a choice. It's nice to know it's out there, and, maybe exactly. One day I'll get around to looking at it.
And there's a discipline as well. People haven't really come to train how to work at home and how to self-motivate and how to be disciplined at home.
Yeah.
It's strange that we haven't had much training, haven't had much development opportunities of how do you be productive at home? How do you not look at your, gaming laptop because it's right there staring you in the face and nobody can see you? Those kind of things are interesting. And I bring it up because I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and it's challenging sometimes for her to concentrate and not look at those games and not talk to friends and that kind of thing during the work day.
Andy,
so it's interesting.
Andy, can we go? We're going to go full circle here, but the people at HAPS love this type of stuff when we talk about it. It's not really business, but it is important, and we're all geeks in here. We're super geeks, all of us.
Sure.
I would love for you to explain to the people in HAPS land and Twitter and YouTube, that's a great thing about HAPS. We're simultaneously on so many platforms right now.
Right.
But you need to have the right equipment. And we love talking about equipment. So if you could just briefly tell them about your camera, tell them about your headphones, because you look magnificent. Now, Hans, you're still magnificent. Don't feel left out. Okay, go ahead, sir. Start
Sure.
with you first.
So I'm using an AverMedia 1080 camera, HD camera, so I get the good picture. It also gives me the ability to move it around, right? So right now I've got it purchased on top of my laptop screen, because traditionally when I'm at work, I have it purchased on top of my big screen next to it. The problem with that is I'm looking up all the time, so you can't actually see me. I'd rather have the camera as close as possible to the image so that I can actually see you and it looks like I'm talking to you. So that's an important point of being able to move around. In terms of the audio that I've got on now, I'm using Bose QC35s, and they're good. And I use them wired. You'll see that they're actually wireless. You know, they're a Bluetooth headset. The problem with Bose and being wireless is it still has the great quality. It's noise cancelling. It's a good quality microphone, but the batteries don't last very long. So in order to extend the life of the batteries, if you just use them on wired, it's got noise cancelling. It lasts for 3 or 4 days before I have to charge them.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you good quality sound and good quality microphone. So investing a little bit into this equipment, and it's really comfortable. I can literally wear this. Well, I do wear this all day, every day at work, and it doesn't hurt your ears. So something that you're interacting with that much, it's worth paying a little bit more to get something that's very comfortable, so that you can be healthy and happy.
Okay, Hans, tell them what you got.
Well, and as Andy brought up, you could spend a horrendous amount of money on equipment, but you don't necessarily have to. I bought a real cheap, I think it was $20 on a flash sale camera for one location, because I just wanted to have something better than the laptop. But for home, I'm running Logitech. I've got a C930 and 922 on a little monopod, so I can actually position it right in between my two main monitors. It keeps me focusing straight ahead, because the more you're looking at the camera, the more you're making or helping make that connection with the audience. I was using simple, I had Logitech, I had a Sennheimer, basic headset that I was using for a while. I finally updated to the Game One headset after doing a lot of research. I tested one of the $30, $40 ones. It worked okay, but the mic volume, I had trouble with the mic volume through my hardware setup. It wasn't the headset. But there's some really great ones around the $40 range. Earbuds, if you watch any of the talk shows, so many are using their AirPods or other earbuds. Those work well. And then I'd say the last thing is, just trying to get a little bit better even lighting. So my first step was getting just a simple LED desk lamp that was, I think, $7. I wrapped it in tissue paper as a diffuser and then put that behind the camera to get a little better lighting. Since then, I've switched over. There's a good camera example. I switched over and just go ahead, Michael.
So this one here, because I don't want people to feel like you have to spend $1 billion.
No.
And a lot of people just don't have the money right now. Okay. So this one here, if you're in the States, this is what you're seeing. The beauty of the man. This is me, by the way. But that there is, I believe you can get for $57 on Amazon right now. And it's the best cheap one that I've had. The other thing is we'll go cheap again. And it's a shameless plug, because I've actually gotten some free things from these people. Fafine. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Mickey. No, okay, sorry. Singing's free. So that is about $50 in the States. A little more in Canada. Okay, enough of me. Finish up what you were doing with the lighting. But I sometimes feel like people get on here and go, I can't afford $300. I can't afford, you know what I mean? So
the other thing I added and actually have recommended is there's LED light panels that come as a 2-pack with a tripod. They'll pop up on sale for $40 for 2 lights, and they come with USB or they run off USB chargers. So they're just great. And, just having one at 45-degree angle, it really fills out the lighting, and it makes a great difference. People who notice will notice, but everyone else will pay more attention because they're not distracted by, harsh shadows or you're really dark in the background sprite. So it's really simple. And you're looking at, $40 for a headset, $40 for lights, $40 for a headset, under $100, you're at a really good quality level.
yes.
Absolutely. And there's little things you can do as well. Like, for example, if you look at my background is just a plain wall. And the way I did that was literally, I went into my office one day and thought, why don't I just swivel my desk around so that my back is at the wall and my desk is going forward, right? So there's little things you can play around with, positions of desks and things to get plain backgrounds if you want to get there as well.
Yeah, and I noticed nobody here is using a green screen and nobody's fading in or fading out, but
Yep.
it is really important to have especially good sound quality because no one is going to listen past 30 seconds if it's breaking in and breaking out. Now, when you have, the kind of beauty that we have in this room, it's really important to have good cameras. So what do we want to end this on? We're at 35 minutes. And how are you doing for time, Andy? Are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
Good.
So I guess it's Andy's turn to ask a question.
Sure. So what do we think about, let's pick a technical topic this time, shall we? Let's see how this goes down.
Sure.
Enterprise architecture. So I'm the chief enterprise architect at my company. It's interesting, the new trends that I'm seeing in enterprise architecture right now. One of the new trends I'm seeing is that enterprise architecture review boards, the governance we were talking about earlier of deciding things about what's scary and what's dangerous and what's not. In enterprise architecture, you have governance boards to decide which project is going to go ahead, which project needs to be curtailed, which project needs to change. That has been ubiquitous for many, many years. And I see a trend in enterprise architecture where actually we're disbanding either enterprise architecture or at least the architecture review board and distributing accountability and responsibility for architecture. In other words, the building blocks behind IT projects. We're distributing that to the teams that are building those projects. And I think that's quite a cool concept, so that you can actually trust your employees, trust the senior people you've employed to do their job, and let them go forth and do their job in the teams that they're working with. So it's a change of mentality. It's very much a trust thing that you have to have. And if you configure it well, it works really well. Then all you've got to do is feed that information back of what decisions have been made on the ground back to the executive when they need it. So that's a new model, a trend that we're seeing. What do you think, Hans? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of variations on that. And I think culturally we're seeing finally a push to making decisions closer to where the problem is, because the people closest to the problem are usually the best ones to solve it. So empowering teams, empowering areas to really figure out what serves their needs best is a great idea. The challenge is we need to do a better job of aligning those local decisions to whatever the organization's goals and strategy are. And I think that's the biggest weakness that, I've been pushing for. An example would be there's a government agency I've been working with, and they had very good local empowerment. The problem was they discovered that they had 22 repetitive systems that did the exact same thing. And worse than that, several of the groups had bought the exact same solution, paying for an enterprise license on top of the fact that they were already licensed for it. So there were 3 groups who had paid full price for something that they already owned and could have used for free. That's where I think the review board comes in, not as a, rigid authority, but rather as, hey, before you buy this or before you do this, we've already got these things. These fit in here. If it's close enough, why don't you give these a try first? And if you really are unique, then go ahead and do your own thing. But, let's try and leverage a little bit. I mean, imagine if our traffic control was all based on localized proprietary. So some places used roundabouts, some people use traffic lights, some people use traffic lights with different colors. You'd have so many accidents. And I think that's where those governance boards do well, is helping look at the landscape and then giving some help, providing more consistency and making it a little easier for groups to achieve their goals.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. It's using these boards as communication mechanisms rather than decision forums, right? Saying this is the library of things that you've got off the shelf that you could use, and you can just pick one off the shelf because we've built it already and it's available and it's free and it's designed and it's integrated and it uses best technology. So those are the things that we can use boards for in future.
Yep. Well, Michael, tying you back into the conversation as well. So Consumer Electronics Show, CES, one of the great shows to see what's up and coming. Of course, they couldn't hold it and they've been doing virtual. what are some of the what are some of the tech innovations, tech changes, devices and gadgets that you're looking forward to this year? What are some of the things that you're hoping to see come out over the next year or two that might be a little more exciting, fun, whether it's work related or not?
You're not going to like my answer, but
Of course I will.
I don't think you will. So I hope that they have everything is on a C power. And what I mean by that is you have one form of charging, not 9,000 cords. And they're thinking about pressing that through. The other thing they're also thinking about, especially for those on a budget, they're going to have where you can have a cell phone. It's 3 pieces. So if the screen breaks, you unscrew 3 screws, you put the screen back on. Let's say that you blow out the power source of it. You can buy another piece that's only about $20. The 3 pieces come apart, you put them back together, and it's not the most beautiful phone in the world, but it's a functional phone that the average person can use for 10 years. The problem is now they trick us. It's like, oh, this is cutting edge and this is fantastic. And then 6 months later, this is cutting edge. And really, all they're doing is they're selling you something where the battery's going to die in 3 years and you're going to uptrade, give it to your kid. Next thing you know, you've got it taken apart. Imagine if the average person could just take it apart themselves, put it together. And I hope that governments push this, that there's at least one option that's that way. And not everyone can afford $1,100 for a cell phone.
Yep.
It's interesting, actually. Just last week, my wife's Google Pixel 3 died. The battery died inside it. And Google Pixel 3 doesn't have like that. It doesn't have a modular component where you can just replace the battery. So I bought a new battery off Amazon. I'm a technical guy. So I slowly prized the back of the cover off the Google Pixel.
It's not fun.
Oh, it's not fun. And then took like 30 screws out, which are all different sizes, and then intricately took out the ribbons of the battery and stuff. Just craziness to change the battery. So, although possible, it's hard work.
But we've made things so complicated now. And do we really need to spend $1,100? And what's happening is there's a whole new market of amazing cell phones that are made all over the world in the price point of $300 to $400 that would easily do what you need to do. And the truth is they may last longer than your Apple phone or your Samsung, and they may not blow up in your pocket.
Yeah. And I think the thing there is that Taro talk with Kelly. So batteries can be discontinued, so you can be forced to get a new phone. I think that's what some of these manufacturers are doing. They're deliberately making these devices built just good enough to last the year or two for their lifespan, and they deliberately don't want it to last much longer because they want you to can't buy another device, obviously. So I sense there is some of that going on in here as well, so that you're kind of forced to upgrade every 2 years to the latest and greatest phone. But as to Mike's point, you don't really need to these days. A phone that's 2 years old right now probably works just as effectively as the latest and greatest phone, right? Still got very good camera. You can take your snaps, you can store lots of photos, you can browse the internet. That technically, there's not actually much difference for the average user. So why do we continue to keep getting these cutting edge phones just the latest and greatest? You can get a little bit more zoom, or you can get a little bit more focus or something.
Well, hopefully we'll see the options. Like, to Michael's point, I think it would be great if I had the option to buy a phone that is modular and easy to update. Maybe it's not as powerful, maybe the screen's not as good, but I have a couple friends who break screens almost on a monthly basis. It would be great for them to do that. Or, as Andy said, why don't we have, if I want a cheap and semi-disposable phone, like I can lease a car so I get a new one every 2 years, why can't I have a cheaper phone and just plan on changing it? And then if I want to buy something that's going to last forever, I'm trying to put a minimum of 150 to 200,000 on every car I drive, and then I'll decide whether or not I'm going to upgrade. So I'm going for durability. I'm going for low maintenance costs. That's more important than having heated leather seats.
Here's the thing, and I saw a prototype of it, and it was amazing. So you could get a really high-end screen, it was $100, or you could get a mid, which was 50, or you could get a low, which was like 30. But they all were compatible with this device. If you wanted a better, latest chipset, you could change the middle panel and pay another $100 and be at the upgraded model.
Right, absolutely. Fat Guy out west saying the power of advertising and peer pressure, keeping up with the Joneses will always be our Achilles heel. I think that's very true in some circumstances. It's I think dependent on the kind of person you are and the kind of age range you are and that kind of thing. Do you need to be fashionable or not? I'm guilty of it. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, when phones were just coming into effect, you know, the latest and greatest phones, I was the one with the latest phone. I remember once going to, I visited Trinidad, I think, at the time, and I had the latest phone that wasn't even released in the UK yet. Mm-hmm. And I went there for a holiday, and everyone was like, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's the latest phone. It's going to be with you in about a year." And it was all cool and fashionable to do that stuff, but it cost a fortune to do that. Nowadays, my phone's 3 years old, and I'm good.
Can I bring up another strange fun fact? Can I talk about Elon Musk for a sec? Okay. So I won't have the numbers exact, but they'll be in the ballpark, okay? So if you had chose to not buy the very first Tesla, it was $77,000. It was in that ballpark. And you took it and put it in stock. Guess how much that stock would be worth today?
How long ago was that?
The very, very first Tesla that they sold. It was $77,000. If you had taken it and just invested it in stock, how much do you think that $77,000 would be worth today?
$400,000.
I think you'd be closer to $1 million because you'd double. Well, no, it wouldn't be that much, but you double your money every 9 years if you just invest in stock.
Okay.
So
neither one of you is even remotely close.
Yeah.
9,400,000.
So Fat Guy out west wins with the closest guess.
That's right.
So there's a piece of wisdom in that, knowing sometimes you're better to drive the crapster, take the money that your ego wanted to buy something, and have faith in the person who is developing these products. And there's opportunities like that all the time. So if we could just briefly talk about how COVID has changed the workforce, it's also changed the opportunities for people to invest. Are you guys open to that? Oh, someone put it right there for us. Sorry, I was wrong. 7,643,000. I was out. Thank you, Fat Guy out west. I'm a semi-thin guy in Toronto.
Sorry, Mike, I lost track there. What was your question again, please?
Okay. What I would like you guys to do is just basically, in a nutshell, explain how opportunities have changed since COVID, and how, like, even if you want to talk about businesses that have thrived, because many mom and pop stores are now gone. All the restaurants that we loved. I think that's part of the reason I'm thinner, is I haven't had all the temptation.
Right. It's interesting, actually. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we're horrified to see all these small businesses go under because of COVID. And we feel it deeply because we used to own a shop together. So when I lived in Trinidad 6 years ago, we opened a small chocolate shop in a very upscale mall, and started importing fine quality chocolate from Europe back into Trinidad, where the beans were originally sourced. First people to do that. And it was a great experience. We did it every year, opened a shop, and there was no end of problems. And we're thinking, if we still had that business today, it wouldn't be survived. It would have gone, obviously, because of COVID. And our heart goes out to all these people that have small family-run shops, because it's their livelihood. And they're going to really struggle here. And it's really difficult to try and help them. I try and buy locally as much as I can, just to try and help these guys. But I just really feel for them. I think there's going to be opportunities though going forward of different ways of working, different ways of distributing, and even investing. So just recently, I've been looking at getting back into an investment portfolio, being able to buy short trading, that kind of thing. And there's online platforms now which allow you to do it very quickly and very easily. So anybody can just jump on and just spend a few dollars here and there on some stocks to see what will happen. And soon, as long as you do your research and you're sensible in what you buy, I think that's a good thing for everybody to get into, to invest and to get the money out there.
We dissed on social media a little earlier because of the prevalence of fake news or suppressing certain opinions. The flip side of that is a lot of the social media platforms have been the new, we'll call it strip mall, the new small business opportunity. So with very focused Google or Facebook or Instagram ads, companies are getting exposure that we'd never know about. And especially, I saw this throughout the holidays, and I ended up buying a number of products because of ads on these platforms that I wouldn't have known about before. Some of them, I liked the idea, and then I found a better version of the product from somewhere else. So I guess their ad backfired there. But I think if you've got something to share, the barrier to entry is so much lower. It's easier to source. It's easier to go, from Shark Tank to go to a commercial kitchen or to go to a co-packer if you have a good recipe. So the barrier to entry for small business is lower. And then really it's just get your feet under, hit the fundamentals, and continue to grow it. So I think hopefully, I feel bad for the businesses that invested in physical locations or had a physical service. They'll be replaced, but I don't know that the people who owned them and lost those businesses will be the ones to replace it. So that's really horrible. But I think technology has really lowered the bar to starting up and doing something that you believe in.
And I think some of them will. Some of these businesses will just go online. It's very easy now to get a marketplace off the shelf almost, so you can start advertising and selling products online. So you can do that, and I would encourage small businesses to do that. And I hope that the social media platforms are a good way to market this material so that we can actually start selling from small businesses online. Yep. I would like to see it a little bit easier. It's not so easier to go to Amazon Marketplace and sell your own products. I've tried before, and it's a bit of a headache to get that done. So I'd like to see that be a little bit easier. But I think it's a good thing for small businesses to do that as well.
Yep. Well, and leveraging what Andy said earlier about enterprise architecture and having that, review board or guidance. If you are launching something, look for open platforms. If you set up your entire storefront on a proprietary, it may be free or very low cost, but what happens if they're not meeting your needs? What happens if you're growing too fast or the cost structure doesn't work? Can you move your store and your products to a different platform easily? When I rebuilt my website, ekmanguides.com, one of the hardest decisions was, what do I build it on? I had been using Joomla and some other open source content management that were very powerful and very portable, but I needed something that was a little easier. And I ended up settling on WordPress because I can do WordPress through WordPress, or I can do it through any number of hosts, and I can move it around if I need to move it off of one host or registrar or another. So I think looking at these and thinking about, am I going to have enough business continuity and disaster recovery options with however I'm building this out? Because we've seen a lot of products, and Andy, share a story if you've got one as well, where, hey, we're just going to build this proof of concept, but this isn't designed to go into production. And then 20 years later, it's still the production system, and we wish we hadn't built it that way.
Yep, I've got lots of those. Yeah, I've actually built systems back in the BBC. I can think of a couple where I spun up a couple of projects just to get us by. For example, when I was involved in the center, which was essentially switching the feeds from different satellites to the different equipment in the BBC center. We did something quick and easy, chopped up. So I just spun up a C# program and just wrote a little bit of code to make it happen. it's still in production today. It was supposed to be like a temporary 1 month fix. And some of those things, if you have a good idea and it kind of works, if it doesn't, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Just keep it going. I've got another really good example of back when I used to work in the fire service. I was in the data team, in the fire service, and we had a little 386 at the time, which was about 5 years old, running in the server room in the little corner on a little shelf. What's that 386 doing? It was like, oh, that's running payroll for the organization. It's like, that's running payroll? It's like, yes, we're afraid that if we unplug it, it won't come on again. So we're just keeping it running and it works and it's fine. We'll just leave it alone. Thank you very much. So some of those things do last a long time, much longer than they're supposed to.
So guys, we're at the 55 mark, which is a magical number, just like this broadcast has been, by the way. If you're okay, I'm okay with going another 5 minutes or so. So is there a topic you feel like we didn't address, or because the thing is, we could go forever. There is a mountain of information in these two men here, and I loved the comments. It wasn't as we got crazy last time. Can we talk about the new administration without going crazy in the comments? Let's see how this will go. So I personally have been feeling, honestly, intuitively calmer. I feel like there is more harmony than there was before. And I mean in the collective. We're getting very woo here. I'm very interested in knowing how it's affecting you guys. It's only been, a week?
Yeah. I think everything's a bit calmer. I just let's pick a topic that goes from Canada to the US that's been in the news recently. So the oil pipeline, right? So Biden has halted the pipeline that comes back down into the States. And I was reading that and I was interested because imagine if the last administration had that kind of conversation, what kind of fireworks it would have been. But with Biden and Trudeau getting together and talking sensibly, Biden was, quite rightly saying, hey, we want to be a carbon neutral country. Obviously promoting those kind of crude oil pipelines, it's obviously against that mentality. So I completely understand why it's going in that direction. And of course, Trudeau is saying, well, hang on a minute, it's costing jobs not doing that. So, we don't really want to do that short term. So I think there's arguments, obviously, both sides. I'm very much I'm using less plastic. I want to be environmentally friendly. I want to be a player in our future. So I can see both sides of the equation. But what do you think, Hans?
I think we're going to see a flip. So everything that one side loved and hated is now going to flip, and we're going to see the exact reverse of it. I think it's just a different flavor. It's going to be a different perspective. So there's going to be some gains, there's going to be losses, and trying to balance that out is going to continue to be tough. The pipeline comes into mind. It's like, finally, we're going to have great, U.S.-Canada relations are going to be great and hatched. And what's the first thing they do? Cut the pipeline. And I think Trudeau said it best. We're doing this anyway. Like, the pipeline is a safer option than what we're doing today, which is driving that oil through the same route on trucks where there's more accidents, more danger to people. This is a safer, better way. And right now, yes, eventually we'd love to be, fossil fuel independent. We're not there yet. And until then, we want to be a little more crude oil independent. So I'm hoping that they're able to resolve it and continue through with those projects. And then I think the rest is going to be a balance of gains and losses for each side as they try and win back what they lost or lose what they won back over the last 4 years.
Okay, you guys feeling that's a good spot for us to
Think
transition to higher forms of light and love? No, I'm not kidding here. So, but that was a great show. There wasn't too much fireworks. We did well. It'll be interesting to see how many people watch the rebroadcast. We're going to do this every Sunday with different guests. So if you would like to be a guest on this show, And, you know, I hope in the future there's a little more friction, if you know what I mean. We have people with a little bit different opinions. As you can see, I've been inviting friends, which is fantastic. And I hope that's the case in the future. But I also love shows where you have people with differences of opinion. Thank you to everybody in the room. I really appreciate your support, especially with me on Haps. I'm now currently at 90,000 views in my first 40 days. So on Haps. So I am very, very happy to be here. Guys, thank you so much for being here. And I always do this here. Join Haps now. There you go. High budget here. Look at that. But
The graphics department spent all week on that.
I always end each of my shows, even my business show, what are you currently grateful for? And we'll end it at that. Okay? Andy.
Me, I am grateful for my family, my daughter and my wife, and spending more time with them.
Perfect.
I'm going to go really easy this time around and say the weather. Our weather this past week has been spectacular. So after cold and rainy and dreary, you know, being up in the 60s Fahrenheit, 15 Celsius for several days with sunshine and Simpsons-like clouds, it's just been great to get outside and bask and really enjoy that and know that spring and rebirth is right around the corner. So for me, the weather's just been a perfect end to January.
Okay, I'm going to end it just slightly woo, and that's just how I do it. I am grateful mostly for the frequency and the energy of these two guests today, who are definitely heightening the room with their knowledge. And honestly, I am so blessed and honored that you were here today. And guys, I hope you have a great week. Everybody who has been in the room today, especially Fat Guy from out west, I hope things work out for you. And thank you for the awards. God bless you all. And I'll see you guys in the green room. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.